Hey guys, I want to take a moment to talk to you about choosing to be happy. Now, I know that seems kind of weird because in the midst of all this, you don't really feel like you get to choose to be anything other than angry, bitter, and, tormented. But there's a lot to be said about taking a moment and really choosing how you're going to progress through this. And for me in my situation, I knew from my past experience and seeing like what my own dad had been through and, stuff like that, that I knew that I didn't want to get stuck in that quagmire of anger and bitterness. And to be perfectly honest, I was. I mean, it took me quite a while to really work through it. But I even started this whole process knowing that I didn't want to get stuck. And the thing is that as soon as you can get to a point to where you can actually make a conscious decision that you don't want to be under the control of an abusive ex, or basically under the situation you're in, you can actually make a decision to do something different. Now, it's not easy. I'll give you that. It does take a lot of perseverance and just fortitude to be able to stay in that mode, but you really can. Now, this is a long process. It took me a couple of years, even knowing I didn't want to be trapped, that I was trapped in all of this, that I was angry and bitter and frustrated and wanted accountability and wanted, justice and all of those different things. And I spent a good amount of time beating my head against the wall, trying to force things to change. Bottom line is the only thing you really have the ability to change is the way you look at things, the way that you process things, the way that you decide to go forward. I see this a lot with people where they get so trapped, with that connection with their ex that they're just unable to separate from that. And it's really sad when I see that because, well, one, I can relate to it because I remember being in that exact same mode. I remember, trying to fight that fight to hold her accountable, to make her co-parent, to make her follow the court order, to make, to do all those things. And I see that a lot with people where they're trying to do the same thing. And I get it. I get that these situations are so freaking annoying. You go through this process, you have this piece of paper that says things are supposed to go a certain way, and you want it to be fair. The thing is you're never going to convince a narcissistic ex that they're wrong and what they're doing is damaging. And when you're playing that game with them, when you're going back and forth and you're arguing your point and you're giving them evidence or you're giving them data points on what they're doing wrong and how damaging it is, all you're doing is you're perpetuating that fight. When you decide to take a pause and to start to separate out what your ex is doing or what you're thinking about with your ex or ruminating about what they're doing, now I get there are times where there are certain things that they do cause problems. Like, let's say I've had this too, where, there's medication that needs to go back and forth and it doesn't happen. You find a way to work around it. You find a way to mitigate the impact that the ex has on you and your kids. It's tough, and it's a tough thing to switch to. I've talked about that with talking directly to teachers, with doctors, on the prescription thing. You basically talk to the doctor and say, hey, I need double, and you tell them why, and you get them, if they will, to accommodate that so that there'll be stuff at both houses, so you don't have to worry about the transition or the change. Now, sometimes, well, let me back up. You can expect that your ex is going to do everything in their power to try to cause conflict and to try, every time you make a change, to try to wedge their way back in. It's inevitable. Expect it, anticipate it, but bottom line, choose to start phasing them out of your life. Okay, so how do you do that? I was just talking about that a minute ago, to where you You find ways to go around them. That's the first thing. The second thing is you look at what is really important that you need to deal with. You know, I've gone through that recently with this stupid medical bill that's been pending since this last summer. And it's like, okay, so do I push it? Do I keep sending those emails like you owe me money? You know, when are you going to pay? Or, you know, the court order doesn't allow you to just decide when you can pay or whatever. Or do I just let it go? Now, I'll tell you, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when all this whole stuff started, you know, and I ended up suing her for it. I mean, obviously, I wasn't ready to let it go. Now, it's like I look at it and it's like, okay, what is the cost to my peace? What is the cost to my happiness by engaging with her, by putting her in my mind, by trying to maintain that interaction, that communication? And realistically, it doesn't do me any good. It actually draws me back down. It adds that negativity back into my life. And that's the real pivot point on this when things really start to change. And it's not that you're letting the ex get away with anything. You're giving yourself a pass. You're giving yourself a break to not allow them to have power and control to manipulate your situation and your emotions. And once you start doing that, and you can start to choose to be basically, it's like, you know what? I know my situation. I know the difficulties and I know what the impacts are, but I choose to find the happiness of the day and to persevere. Guys, it took me a long time to get to that point. I mean, I was really, really, really frustrated with everything. You know, I have reason to be frustrated now, even though things have turned around and one kid's dropped off and, every month when I look at my bank statements and, I was talking to someone the other day and they were talking about how they had X amount of dollars in savings. I'm like, I have like a tenth of what you have in savings. I'm still running pretty lean. I mean, it's like, and what I'm trying to say is I could choose to still be angry about that. I could choose to still allow her from her position away from me to still be able to reach in and to manipulate my emotions and my feelings. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want that in my life. I want positive, happy, chaos-free things in my life for stability, for calm, for tranquility, so that I can focus on my environment and I can focus on the environment for my kids and I can focus on having some inner, building memories and relationships with my kids. So this is really tough. And I know early on in this whole process, it seems like it's a million years away. But I just want to plant that seed in your head. I want you to think about it, that when things happen, think about it as a cost. Is like engaging. What is the cost of engaging with the ex to prove your point? Or, I get you, you absolutely have to set boundaries, but what is the way to do it that impacts your environment the least and still accomplishes what you need to accomplish? I mean, just think about that as you're going through it. Sometimes you're still going to have to say, you know what? I have to send this email, or I have to set this boundary, or I have to establish this baseline. I get it. If you're in the middle of building your court order, then you're going to have to be a little bit more active in it. I'm not saying be passive about things, but you're going to have, you're going to be in the middle of that fight. So there's some other decisions you're going to have to do because of that situation. But even with that, try to work it out to where they are not getting under your skin, triggering your emotions, and impacting or negatively impacting your environment with their decisions and their actions, which I get that it's tough. When you're in the midst of it, it's really tough. But if you can start thinking about that, if you can start saying, you know what, every time I respond or I react emotionally, every time I allow myself to get frustrated whenever they do something, maybe you'll be able to take a pause and go, okay, you know what, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to take a break and not respond, or I'm going to try to take a step back and look at the bigger picture on how their shenanigans, what they're doing, how it's impacting the situation, and how is it really going to impact your environment going forward, meaning, maybe your court case or whatever. Guys, the biggest thing is when they're able to get you to respond negatively and they're able to get you to react, which means you're not thinking clearly, you're not making as good as decisions as you could. It gives them an advantage to where they can basically play your emotions against you. It's by design. Think about it. That's what they've been doing throughout the relationship. Whenever you were with them, when they were gaslighting you and they were manipulating you and they were trying to keep you off balance, they're trying to do the same thing, even though they're not, for the most part, in the same house. I know some of you guys are still living with them, but that's the game, right? If they can get you to respond negatively, they can get you to send that terse, nasty email, or they can get you to blow up in public where, they can pretend that you're violent or whatever. That is what they're trying to do. Keep that in mind. Think long term, what the big picture is, what the entire war you're fighting is, not this one little battle. Be strategic about your decisions. Okay, so on that, I'm going to wrap this up. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you like the channel, please subscribe. Hit that bell notification so you'll actually be notified of videos. If you haven't run over to the Dad's Thriving Divorce website, head on over there and sign up for the newsletter so you get all the email updates that I send out. If you go to the main page and click on the Discord server, that's growing really well. Check that out too. And I will chat with you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.